You want to go first, Kristen? Because I think I got something. Let me gather all my thoughts real quick because okay.
My name is Athena McNair, and today I'm here to share with you a peek inside the world of the 8%. The 8% represents the percentage of African American undergraduate students currently attending the University of Georgia. As part of the 8%, I have a first-hand experience on the struggles and concerns that myself as well as many other Black students attending a predominantly white institute deal with on a day-to-day basis. Everything from dealing with uncomfortable moments in class, dating, and stereotypes, all issues that wouldn't necessarily be a concern to other students, become a battle of acceptance for Black students. I had the opportunity to sit down with 2 Black students and discuss with them their experience at a predominantly white institute like UGA.
UGA wasn't my first choice to go to college at. I was actually looking at Emory, but that's when I was pre-med, so I figured Emory is the perfect place to go because they have medical school. I got into other schools, but those schools were private schools again, so that's like a big cost factor there where I just felt like I would just be drowning in debt more than I already am. Got into Spelman. That was one of the other private colleges I was talking about that was just way too expensive for what I could afford and my parents could help me afford, right. So that was out automatically.
Yeah. Students like Kristen has no choice but to decline her acceptance to an HBCU like Spelman, mainly because of the cost of tuition. Some of the top HBCUs in Georgia are private institutions like Spelman, Clark Atlanta, and Howard University that has an average in-state tuition of $25,000. While some of the top public universities in Georgia, like UGA, Georgia State, and Georgia Tech, has an average in-state tuition of a little over $11,000. I recently spoke to Professor Shauna Lee of UGA's African American Studies Department, and she shared her opinions on why her students and other Black students choose to go to schools like UGA.
And I asked my students, I said, well, okay, why do you make a choice to go here? I think one, there's the cost, that it's in-state, that some of them can be hoped. So there's something very pragmatic about that, right? So I think there's the prestige part. A lot of them have learned, even though they know the history of Black people being excluded from the school, from its founding all the way up through, the year that everybody likes to celebrate, 1961. I think also they think about, okay, this is how you get the good jobs. It's the flagship institution, and so people think about what a degree could bring them in the way of prestige and connections, graduate study, and so it becomes a very practical decision.
But choosing to go to a predominantly white college is only the first challenges of many that awaits Black students. Veronica and Kristen, journalism majors at UGA, shared some of their more impactful experiences. I don't know if you've had a similar experience, especially when you have like a large classroom and there's like over 100 students in there, and you're like one of maybe 2 or 3 Black students in there, and then a conversation about race comes up, and automatically you feel like not only do you already feel kind of uncomfortable in that situation, but then you're called upon or viewed as someone that should know what's being discussed. So talk about like a time that's happened to you.
So my minor is sociology, and I actually took a sociology of race class. It wasn't 100 students, but it was about like 40, 50 students in there. I think I was one of maybe 5, which is a big number like here. So I was like, okay, I finally have a small group of people that won't make me feel like an elephant. But the whole class is about race. So everything we talked about was about race. And at one point we were talking about like the desegregation of UGA. And I kind of felt like my professor was really focused on the 5 of us to say the most in class, because I guess he thought that we were born during that time and we could talk about it, but we weren't. And as for the white students, they weren't really saying much, and it was just kind of awkward. It would be awkward silence. And when he would talk, he would kind of look at us like we were supposed to say something, but I mean, we had stuff to say, but we're not like the spokesperson of all Black people in America. And so that's probably the time that stands out the most to me, where I felt like I was just being singled out.
Mm-hmm.
Actually right now one of my minors is women's studies, and one of the classes I'm in, we've been discussing race. Actually last class there was a reading that we had to do, and it was written by a Black woman talking about how, you know, a lot of feminists and people that write about feminism weren't including race. So she was talking about like Black women specifically. So me and two other girls in there are Black or African American, whichever they choose to identify by. But it was like she wanted to hear from us and like our perspective, and it's like Kristen said, we can't speak for every Black person or Black woman even. It's just that awkward moment where you're like, I mean, thank you for like wanting to hear our perspective, but also like I don't want to be singled out to like give you my perspective on things.
How many Black professors have you had since you've been at UGA?
One. And I've been here. This is my third year.
Which class was that?
One of my women's studies, Dr. Ray.
One.
What class was that?
Family consumer science, one of those like HDFS classes. I think it was family development.
I actually might even know your professor
Yeah.
because I worked up there.
Small world.
I really do. I knew like every Black person in there because I worked there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So, both of you are obviously Grady students. You haven't had a single Black professor in your own major.
There is a Black professor in there, and I know she's amazing. Everyone
Valerie
talks
Boyd.
highly. Yes, I haven't had the opportunity to have her yet, too. But yeah, I haven't had a Black professor in Grady at all.
Yeah, same.
And you're graduating.
In December.
Yeah, I've one this entire time, one Black professor.
Another thing that I was interested in was relationships on campus.
I have noticed that the majority, if not all, of the people that I actually consider a friend are Black. I have acquaintances of other races, but I can't think of a significant friendship with someone that's not Black. And I think that's because before I came to UGA, my high school and my middle school and my elementary school was all Black. So I was used to being around that anyway. And so coming here, I wanted to be around people that I could relate to, and I could relate to Black because that's what I'm used to. I have guy friends at UJ that are Black. In terms of like other guys of other races, I find that white guys would only really pay attention to me if they're drunk downtown. That's pretty much the primary place
Is that the same for you?
Yeah.
That happens. In class, nothing. Walking around campus, nothing.
But they're students though.
Yeah,
And they only pay attention to you when they're drunk.
pretty much.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much.
Why do you think that is though?
I think part of it is because maybe I can't speak for them exactly, but from like what I think is that they don't think they're supposed to talk to Black girls on campus because, I don't know, like maybe it's down south, we still have racism, it's rampant. So maybe they're like, and maybe in their heads they might want to, but they don't know how that would look from the outside to like their friends and like their fraternities, whatever. So I feel like when you add alcohol into it, and when you're downtown, it's like, oh, well, I only did that because I'm drunk, like, so I can do whatever, and I can use the excuse, I was drunk, that's why I talked to her, or whatever. I would never talk to her outside of that. So I think that it's just like a cultural thing for them to where that's just not what you do. Like, you don't talk to Black girls. It's off limits.
Yeah.
To me, at least.
Guys, for example, like a lot of times before even getting to college, like if a white guy was interested in me, it was really just more of like not really interested in me, but interested in like getting to me in a sexual way. I guess a way for them to say, oh, like, yeah, like I've messed with a Black girl before, but never
To
like,
say that you
yeah,
did it.
just to say that they've done it. But like in college, I've actually had someone like just in a conversation just mention like that they don't know how to approach a black girl, like a black woman, black girl, whatever. They feel intimidated, or like they feel like they're just above, like I don't even know how to describe it, but like they just feel like they can't approach a black woman, basically.
Uncomfortable experiences in classrooms, friendships, and dating aren't the only things that Black students at a PWI struggle with. According to a research paper done by Ebony McGee, an assistant professor of diversity and urban development at Vanderbilt's Peabody College of Education and Human Development, believe that Black students are dealing with hidden mental health issues. In her paper, she writes, "We have witnessed Black students work themselves to the point of extreme illness in attempting to escape the constant threat of perceived intellectual inferiority." I had the opportunity to speak to Dr. David Stovall, a professor at the University of Illinois in Chicago and co-author of the same research article, and he explained how the sense of inferiority in classrooms is formed amongst Black students.
So if you think about the majority of Black students that come from city spaces or schools in the city that were public schools, a lot of times they may not be exposed to the same set of resources that white students or other students in highly resource affluent suburban areas may have. And this isn't discussed amongst Black students, but when they see the grades or when they have to check, how the curve stands in classes, especially in STEM fields, this can sometimes be shocking to folks. And if this happens repeatedly, then this could engender a sense of inferiority in students who are not supported. And I think that's an important piece. So if students are not supported, then that sense of inferiority can kick in pretty quickly and pretty heavily.
The need for Black students to prove themselves worthy in a classroom setting is something Veronica and Kristen seems to relate to.
I feel like my journalism classes are that way, just because I've always been either the only Black person in the class or maybe one of three. So especially when I'm the only, this was in my photojournalism class. It was a smaller class. It was like maybe 20, 15 students in there. And so that class is really hands-on based. It's about what you do, not necessarily what you know. So you really have to perform well. And I always felt like if I messed up, it's like, oh, the Black girl messed up. She can't do it. So I would always really push myself harder than probably what I needed to do things and like complete them, and like, because I wanted to do well. I wanted my professor to know that I can do this. Like, I might have different skin, but that doesn't mean anything, So I feel like when you're the only whatever, you can be the only girl, the only Black person, whatever you are. When you're in that situation, you want to stand out, but in a good way. Like, you don't want to stand out as anything less than amazing, basically, because it's just like they'll remember that.
That's actually been something that I have felt, I guess, since school, like my entire life. Going to school with mostly white people, like I've never felt like I had to prove myself, but more so like I just wanted to exceed everyone's expectations of what a Black person or a Black girl or woman should do. So like I always like pushed myself to do what white people would usually think Black people couldn't do. I wanted to kind of be that voice for other Black people that weren't the stereotypical Black person, and say like, look, there are Black people out here that aren't your whatever stereotype you're considering them to be.
Although Black students may continue to struggle with that internal battle of acceptance, there may be some things that can be done to help make Black students feel more comfortable in an environment like UGA.
I think there should be training for professors. You have people who've been in the profession like me, 25, 30 years, singling out students, making generalizations, bringing a kind of hyper awareness to the fact that we are not at a genuinely diverse institution. Otherwise, why do you always have to turn to the Black student and ask them to interpret every racial reality that's outside your own? That's a fundamental issue of training. In the same way that we train people around sexual harassment and other ways of how to be more inclusive and fair to individuals, the same thing has to happen in terms of racial interactions within the classroom. And so we could have a bazillion multicultural courses and requirements, but if you still have these dynamics that are being recreated in every class because the professor is not culturally literate enough, then that's a problem.
It really does make a difference when the person that's teaching you looks like you, because it's like, okay, they see me, I see them, it's good. They understand where I'm at, I understand where they're at. That's not to say that the professors here aren't great, because a lot of them are, but when I had a black professor, I just felt different in that class. Like, I felt like I could actually be confident in like what I would say in the class, and I knew she would actually like appreciate it, and she would see me as more than just a black student. Especially like in journalism, like that's your career, so you want to see what it's like on the other side. When you graduate, you want to see that it's possible to be this person and do what they do.
Right.
So yeah, more
Yes.
black people, please.
That was good. That was really good.
Athena McNair, Grady College. Next time on the 8%. As a black student at a PWI, there's got to be some struggles when it comes to stereotypes.
There's always that like stereotype for black people that the only reason we get into college is because we are athletic animals or something.
It was my actual hair, so I straightened my hair. And my professor, he was taking roll, and he doesn't like.
I just know where this is going. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Put in the podcast. Veronica slaps forehead. That's what that sound was. I'm so sorry.
Okay, sorry for